Tim Aiden joining us from SB Nation's Black Shoe Diaries, looking back at Penn State football. So our three remaining questions, Tim, of course, as we set you up for them. And we did this a few years ago, and I thought I'd bring it back. It was a whole lot of fun. So first off, what would you change about Penn State football?
I think what I changed about, I'm going to cheat here in just a couple of things I would change. One has to do with more the game day experience. The other has to do with facilities and whatnot. So the facilities, they did just secure a $69 million gift for that, but they are as a program kind of woefully behind when you compare them to the other big time programs like Bama and Ohio State, maybe even Clemson. I know like Minnesota and Northwestern have opened really nice facilities, which are probably above Penn State's at this point. That's not something that should really be happening if you're Penn State. I think part of it is I think they lack rich boosters that you'd see for a lot of these SEC programs, especially. So maybe I would magically create some rich boosters to help fund these facilities and maybe up the coaches' salaries a little more, especially the assistants. I know I know Franklin has pushed for and gotten upgrades to his assistant salary pool from the athletic department. So hopefully that'll lead to being able to hang on to guys like Brent Pry and Jaywan Sider, Sean Spence, the guys who, the best assistants. And the other thing I would change about game day is I think maybe it seemed like they did a better job this last year, but in general, I do like it when the bands play more as opposed to getting the piped in music that you hear at like a professional stadium. So I would just say, let the blue band play a little more. I think they've done a little bit better of a job in recent years of balancing between, the piped in stuff and the blue band playing. I think they've mic'd up the blue band section so that they do sound louder than they used to. So those are my things I would change about Penn State.
Got Tim Aiden on the line from SB Nation's Black Shoe Diaries talking Penn State football. Okay, 1 down, 2 to go. What would you change about Big Ten football?
So my biggest thing I'd say is get rid of divisions. I think right now, the way they are, it's just there's a ridiculous imbalance between East and West. It just seems like the West, you're battling for who's going to be the sacrificial lamb in the Big Ten championship game. Against lately it's been Ohio State. Or, the East is just very stacked. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State. The West, I guess you got teams that are starting to get a little better, but it's not anywhere near what the talent level in the East is at this point. So I'll just get rid of divisions and just have, you can have some tiebreakers in place, but you just have the best 2 teams play in the Big Ten championship game at the end of the season. Either that or another alternative maybe would be, this would be kind of radical, but they could add 2 more teams and then split into 4 different pods of 4 teams each. And, I think from there you can one pod, it's like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and then maybe like Michigan State or Wisconsin. They'd be in separate pods. And I guess you could have protective crossover games and whatnot. But then at the end of the regular season, you can have, I guess, the winner of each pod, and I guess you can seed it somehow. But, the best and the 4th best teams, pod winners, I guess I should say, play each other, just, higher seeds, home field. And then the winners of those 2 games, those pods, play in the Big Ten championship. Kind of a radical idea. I know that's something to throw out there.
Who are you adding to the Big Ten?
Adding to the Big Ten, I would say, I think Missouri would be a prime candidate if they weren't already in the SEC. But I would say you can add a team like maybe I would go after maybe West Virginia. I mean, they just look so out of place in the Big 12. At least I think Big 10 geographically they're a little closer to, Pennsylvania, Ohio, even Maryland. To go after them. I think you could also, you could try and make a play maybe for Syracuse, although I doubt they're gonna bite at that. I think they seem to be pretty happy in the ACC. If you really want to be bold and maybe get someone from a non-Power 5, like Group 5, you could look at perhaps Cincinnati. But again, it's not something I admittedly thought highly about, but that's something to consider. The other thing I would maybe do is reduce the number of conference games by one. So go back to playing 8 conference games instead of 9. And I think it gives more flexibility for scheduling, so they can either schedule maybe a decent non-conference team, like decent enough to make the playoff committee happy, but nothing insanely challenging like a Bama or a Clemson. And also, I just think with the Big Ten now, I know we talk about how East-West there's an imbalance, but there's still enough parity where any given week it seems there can be some crazy upset. There's just one more chance at a crazy upset with 9 conference games as opposed to 8. And you saw with Ohio State and Purdue last year. And also it just seems like there's I see the SEC still sticks to 8 games, and they always have that one non-conference game against some FCS school they seem to play in late November. And I don't see much being done to change that. So I mean, I think it gives them an advantage. So I think the Big Ten might handicap itself a little bit less, have a better shot at the playoff if they went back to an eight game conference schedule. So those are the things I would change about the Big Ten.
So the Big 12 and the Pac-12 play 9 conference games as well. The ACC and the SEC play 8. I would raise the ACC and the SEC to 9 games myself, because I just think to play in a 14-team conference where you're only playing 8 conference games, therefore you're missing 5 opponents, I just think there's too much variation in the conference scheduling. I think these conferences are too large. They should be 10 or 12 teams, because to not play a team in your conference for 5 or 6 or 7 years is ridiculous. And that's what happens, especially in the ACC and the SEC, because they've got a specific designated rival in the other division. So you got 6 other teams in the division. Therefore, you're rotating games. You're not seeing a team for 6 years in the other division. And these conferences are too big and they play too few games. All right, we got Tim Aiden on the line from SB Nation's Black Shoe Diaries. And last up, Tim, you're the czar of college football. What do you change?
So I think first and foremost, I would expand the playoff, at least get it to 8 teams. I think preferably something more like 12 to 16 teams, and a system where I feel like you should include automatic. So I say 6. Let's just say 16 teams for make it a little more simpler. 16 teams. You can include the conference champion from each of the conferences. There's 11, I believe, for between all the conferences.
I think we're at 10.
Or 10. Okay, so you have auto bids for the 10 different conferences champions, and then you take the 6 best at-large teams, and then you play the first 2 rounds. You play on the higher seeded teams' home field. And then going to the semifinals, I think you can work in that the way the bowl system is now, how they rotate between the current college football playoff semifinals. You can play them at different rotating bowl sites, and then of course national championship game. That'll be wherever they put that. So I think I would definitely expand the playoff. I think it's just I think I'm personally just getting tired of seeing the same 3 or 4 teams every year getting, not 4, but same. It always seems like it's Clemson, Bama, and then maybe a couple other teams that usually get them. It's just not. I just don't feel like you're getting enough variety in the playoffs. I guess I'm a guy who likes some level of variety, and others having a legit shot at participating in a tournament like that. So that'd be my biggest thing. I think another thing I would change is to have a marquee matchup every year during week 0. And it's actually happening this year with Miami and Florida moving their game a week earlier. to, I think it's August 24th. I think August 31st, that week is week 1. So I just think I remember growing up, there was always this kickoff classic, there's Eddie Robinson classic. You know, it was like one game, 1 or 2 games, like between marquee opponents, like the week before the first full slate of college football games. And I think this is a great way to just whet the fans' appetite, and maybe for the fans of those schools, gives them an excuse to travel someplace as well before Labor Day weekend.
All right. It's always a fun discussion when we talk about what we change about college football, and it's certainly one of the most popular answers to change the college football playoff. And everybody has heard, who watches this channel on any regular basis, my playoff system. So I'll refrain from diving into that. Tim AYDIN joining us from SB Nation's Black Shoe Diaries. Tim, we appreciate you stopping by.
Sure thing, Mark. Thanks for having me.